All right, so that was the prosecution and the defense's opening statements. Let's break it down right now with trial attorney and professor at Emory University School of Law. Joining us right now, Randy Kessler. Randy, great to have you back here.
Good morning.
Now, this was a very interesting case to follow for a lot of different reasons. I want to first ask, who's the victim here? Is it Shayna or is it Ryan? It's an interesting argument.
Well, that's about the only argument they have. You know, it's interesting to watch it in hindsight and see the prosecution has such an advantage when they go first. You know, the first impression, once he finished talking, I'm sure the jury thought she did it, case over. It's a hard hole to climb out of for the defense, but that's the only defense they really have, is that she's the victim, and it's going to be a balancing act. Do they feel like he was telling a better story and that she's believable? Or the prosecution's case? The prosecution sounds pretty strong right now.
Well, we can't forget that really what incriminated her was the statements she was making after the shooting. In fact, she became synonymous. I think it was Good Morning America who coined her the nose job killer, because one of the statements she allegedly made was that Ryan was so vain, I finally gave him the nose job he always wanted by shooting him in the face. That, for the defense, and Shayna Hubers, when she takes the stand a little bit later on, that is tough to kind of argue against, right?
Absolutely, and the prosecution did a really good job of focusing the jury's attention on the facts at the time of the event, because now it's years later, and she's going to say a different story. They're going to spin it a different way. It's easy to think in your mind or create a plan or a defense or an alibi, but if you focus on what were the exact facts, what was the most likely to be true, and it's the facts from the pictures, the DNA, whatever it is, and her statements right after, those are almost unescapable. That's a really tough hill for her to climb.
I want to talk a little bit more after our next break about how do you even argue against that? What are alternative ways of saying? Because she wants to say she was the victim, that Ryan Poston was aggressive, he was cheating on her. We'll talk more about it. Tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, we're jumping back into the Shayna Hubers trial. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So today on the program, we are recapping all those trials that we've covered where the defendant took the stand. Always something very exciting to see. And right now we're starting off with the Shayna Hubers case, one of the most exciting cases that we covered here on the network. Remember, she was charged with the murder of her boyfriend, Ryan Poston. One of the most remarkable things, though, in this case was seeing her statements and hearing about her statements and her behavior after the shooting. Some could say that's what incriminated her more than anything. Speaking of which, let's learn a little bit more about those statements. So, do you remember when Officer Amber Ensweiler took the stand and talked a little bit about the statements made or allegedly made by Shayna Hubers? Well, if you didn't, take a look at this.
She had mentioned something about, is he dead, and did you see the white sheet over him? But I don't remember exactly what she said about it.
Did she say anything specifically about where the shots were fired?
Yes, she said she thought she shot him in the face and in the chest, but she didn't remember which one was first.
So during this period of time when you don't have a recording to go back on, this is based upon your memory, those are the types of things that you remember. That she mentioned giving him the nose job?
Yes.
Even prior to it being said on the recording?
Correct.
Just please clean it up. Objection sustained. Go ahead.
You remember her making that comment to you more than once, is that correct?
That's correct.
You remember her emotional abuse, and you remember nothing about physical abuse?
Objection, ask and answer. Overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Is that what you remember?
That's correct.
Okay. Anything that you remember as it relates to Mr. Poston and guns?
That he was a gun freak, I think is what she called it. Mm-hmm. A gun freak or a gun fanatic. I can't remember what the terminology was. But that it was funny that the guns he loved so much killed him.
That's funny. At this point, Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
A little loose at the tongue there. Let's talk about it, Randy. You know, it's hard to judge somebody after they shoot somebody, and she's claiming it was self-defense. So it's maybe hard. It's kind of like a, really emotional time. But these are kind of strange statements, no, to be making, and they're strategic statements. I'm curious your reaction.
You know, the trial could go on for weeks, months, years. We saw the O.J. Simpson case, and what do we all remember, right? If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. There are sound bites that will just ring and ring and ring in the jury's head, and that's one of them that I don't know how much they can throw up against the wall. That's the one thing that's going to come through. It's hard to get over that. That is such a statement.
Especially the idea of saying, oh, he was a gun freak. It seemed almost like, hey, he's the one who was the aggressor. He had the gun. Don't blame me.
Yeah, but the facts are, you know, they were in her hand. It sounds like she's desperate to find a way out. But, oh, my God, I gave him the nose job he always wanted. That's almost more offensive than I shot him because for any other reason. She was really making fun of it, making light of it. And that's something that I don't think the jury's going to take well.
You know, people could believe her story, but, you know, we have to go to the evidence. So what was the condition of Ryan Poston? Let's talk now and talk about the medical examiner, Dr. Gregory Wenger, and he testified, and I want you to hear the injury sustained by Ryan Poston. It could give you a better sense of what really happened that night. Take a look.
So would it be safe to say that Mr. Poston was alive for each
Yes.
of these shots?
Yes.
Within a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
If someone had said that the first shot that Mr. Poston received was, I think we referred to it as the right temple.
Yes.
I think that's what you referred to it as. And after that shot, he was twitching. From a medical perspective, what does that say to you?
Well, Mr. Poston had severe brain injury. The brain can react to severe injury by having seizures. And seizures may be everything from staring to flailing your arms and legs to twitching to uttering things. All those things can occur when the brain's firing off and having a seizure. So brain injury could cause a seizure. He certainly had brain injury. So if someone says that he is twitching, he's probably having seizures.
Wow, that's just a brutal end. I want to talk, Randy. Now, you just heard this, that he was alive, in this medical expert's opinion, for each one of those shots. What does that tell you?
Well, first thing, as a trial professor and trial lawyer, I think it's hard to use the word beautiful, but what a good examination of this witness leading right down the path. So he was still alive and within a reasonable degree of medical certainty, yes. I mean, boom, capsulized, put it into a box and said to the jury, this guy was suffering. It wasn't just a shot and it was done. It was continuing to suffer. It's going to be part of that emotional reaction the jury's going to have. It's not just somebody they can't figure. They could see their friends writhing on the pain, on the floor in pain, and associate that. This is just the
emotional impact of it is clear, but the idea of, was this self-defense? If he really was a threat, did you have to finish him off?
That's exactly right. If it was to keep him away from her, one shot would have done it. It wouldn't have to be one shot to the face, one shot to the knee, to the leg. And, of course, you may not think that quickly. You're just shooting to protect yourself if that's her defense. But one shot certainly would have done it. On the other hand, you never know who has been in that situation. How would you or I react if we really were, acting in self-defense? You might just shoot. But like the prosecution said in the opening, walking around, shooting him slowly. It wasn't boom, 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 boom. It was apparently a few seconds between. So things are getting tough for the defense.
Well, either if it was self-defense or not, we know one thing. That was a brutal way to die. Well, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to focus more on the Shayna Hubers trial. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. We're recapping the Shayna Hubers trial, one of the trials that we're covering today in Defendant Speaks Day. All those trials where the defendant took the stand, and we know Shayna Hubers did that. We'll play that for you in a little bit, but let's take a step back and remember what her defense is. Her defense was that she was the victim, that Ryan, the night of the shooting, threw her around the apartment. She had to do what she had to do to save her life, that he threw her around like a rag doll. Well, Lieutenant David Fornish from the Highland Heights Police Department took the stand and investigated the crime scene, Ryan's apartment. Did it look like that? Take a look.
One of the things that we talked about is with Ms. Hubers, in her statement, saying, I'll use her words, thrown around the room like a rag doll, thrown into the bookcase. What was one of your concerns as an investigator when you see this scene?
That there was nothing knocked down on the shelf.
Nothing knocked down on the shelf when you first came?
Correct. There was dust. If you look up on top, there's a card. There's items that could have been knocked over.
Here it looks like a birthday card
Yeah, some
or...
type of card. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And nothing at that point in time was out of place?
No, ma'am.
Another strike against the Huber's defense team. Sure doesn't look like a struggle ensued in that apartment. Let's see now the testimony of Bill Birkenhauer, also from the Highland Heights Police. He's the Highland Heights Police Chief. Now he is going to talk about, let's say, the odd behavior of Shayna Hubers and questionable statements that she made. Take a look.
Yes, I can. That's the living room area, both TVs, and the love seat in the picture, chair in the middle of the living room floor, and footstool.
And can you explain to the jury the importance of this photograph from your investigative perspective?
Well, a couple of things. One, you can start to see the clutter and the stuff in the living room with the chairs in the middle of the floor and the footstool and things of that nature. Both TVs are on. Both TVs are in place. The one TV...
What does that mean, in place?
These are not knocked over on the floor, knocked over, pushed against the wall, damaged in any way. These TVs also were pretty much covered in dust. So it's obvious that nobody even brushed up against the TVs because there would have been streaks from the dust on the screens and the sides.
And there was no dust disturbed?
No, there was not. The text message, this is, again, from Shayna Huber's cell phone. He collects them. A part of me wanted to turn around and shoot him. I wonder why he's taking me on dates and stuff. LOL. I'm not going to turn down learning to shoot a gun. Ha ha ha.
Did you hear communication from the defendant regarding what she did when the two of them would break up?
Quite a bit, actually. There was messages that said she just shows up. She dresses up, gets looking pretty, and just shows up. She doesn't leave. She keeps calling him until he finally answers.
Did she say why she thought the defendant or the victim, Mr. Poston, was still with her after those occasions?
Because when he breaks up with her, she cries nonstop until he takes her back and he feels bad.
Let's talk a little bit about October 11th, the day before Mr. Poston was shot and killed. Are you aware of what happened earlier that week between the two of them?
Well, Shayna Hubers had been calling Ryan, asking to go out on a date, to go see the movie Taken 2 and go to dinner. I think he acknowledged that he would do that. She sent multiple messages trying to lock down the date and time and where they were going and such like that.
Okay, so that was her idea to go to a movie?
Yes, clearly.
And then we heard that later the plans changed.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, Randy, you're the trial attorney. Was that a good series of testimony clips against the defense there? I mean, really think about this. We just heard a lot. That apartment really didn't look like a struggle was ensuing. And we learned some really questionable comments, including the fact that she wanted to turn around and shoot Ryan in the face. And then apparently kind of wanted to stalk him a bit. She kept wanting to see him. So if you're the defense, do you just take a big gulp?
I think you do. I mean, the only thing that I keep hearing, the mental image in my head is Jodi Arias. I just keep thinking vindictive, angry, flippant, callous, not thinking about it seriously. I think the defense has to pretty much, you're right, take a big gulp and say, it's not true. Why would this woman want to kill somebody that she was in love with? It's a hard set of facts for them.
I don't know how you can be thrown around the room like a rag doll and yet everything looks okay. The bigger question is, this was her second trial. She got a second chance. How many trials do we cover here on Law and Crime where many defendants would want that second chance, and it doesn't happen? The first trial, because there was a juror who was a convicted felon and didn't relay that information during the jury selection process, she got a whole new trial, a whole new bite at the apple. And this is what happens? So what do you think about for her defense team in hearing this?
Well, you know, to get a second chance is always good when there was a guilty verdict, right? The first time. You want to make sure that you get a second chance, and you've already heard the prosecution's case. But the advantage goes both ways, because the prosecution always has the burden to prove the case, so they've got to get up first, put on their case, and let the defense respond to it. This time, the prosecution now knows how the defense is going to respond because they've been through it before. So there's an advantage both ways. I don't mind being the prosecution on the second time around, because now, unlike the first time, I know what the defense is going to be, and I can prepare for it. Like he said in the opening, they're probably going to have some expert come in and talk about her psychological condition. They knew exactly what the expert was going to say because they'd been there before.
The thing in this case was a little different. The defense seemed to focus more on the sex aspect, that, you know, she really tried to please Ryan, and that aspect. Was that a good move to change up that strategy?
Well, you know, the strategy the first time didn't work. So
Good
when
point.
it doesn't work the first time, you got to come after something else. You got to change something up. You know, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So they had to try something new. This is maybe all they had.
Now, this is Defendant Speaks Day. We're covering all these trials where the defendant takes the stand. A little bit later on, Randy, we're going to play your testimony. Do you recommend a defendant to take the stand?
Well, of course, we never want the defendant to testify because they may say something that puts the jury over the top. The burden of proof is against the prosecution. So if they don't meet their burden of proof, we don't want to give them anything that lets them cross-examine my client and say, oh, now we caught you lying, so the jury knows you're a liar. But sometimes desperate times call for desperate measures. This seems like a desperate time. She was found guilty before.
Randy, she's so likable. You know, why not put her on the stand? And we're going to cover that in a minute. Let's take a break. When we come back, though, we're going to hear more testimony, but this time from the family and friends of Ryan Poston. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We are covering the Shayna Huber's trial, recapping it for you in its entirety on Defendant Speaks Day, where we cover all those trials where the defendant took the stand. Now, commentary aside about Shayna Huber's and her odd behavior, we can't forget the fact that there was a victim here. Ryan Poston was shot dead. But he's not the only victim. The family and friends of this young man have to now deal with the fact that he is no longer with them. And they had an opportunity to speak at Shayna Huber's trial. Let's start right now with Jay Poston. This is the victim's father. Take a look.
Do you know where he typically kept that weapon?
He kept it on his dining room table.
And how is it that you know that?
I saw it there quite often.
So that was not unusual.
Not unusual at all.
Do you know the defendant?
I do.
And how do you know her?
How do I know her? Just from seeing her around my son in the condo every so often.
That was going to be my next question then. Explain to the jury what you mean by every so often.
Well, I just never knew if she was going to be there. There would be long periods of time where she was not there. If I walked in and I saw an overnight bag in the foyer, I would think, okay, she's here. But I never really saw any evidence of her being there. I never saw clothing in any of the bedrooms or anything of hers in my son's bathroom.
What would you say was the status of, I'll call it the situation between her and your son?
I don't know what the status was. The status was my son wanted her not to be around, and the status was she kept coming around. I would invite my son to dinner every week. I took my mother and father to dinner every night for 20 years, and every Saturday I'd invite my son and I'd say, bring Shayna, and he not once did.
According to Ryan's own father, Shayna just kept appearing and appearing and appearing when he didn't want her there. Let's move on now to Peter Carter. This is Ryan Poston's stepfather. Take a look.
You know, Ryan was in law school at the time, and he came to me, and we were having dinner one night, and he hands me this paper and at dinner, and it was just the two of us because his mom and the girls were out of town, and I said, I said, what's this, a bill for something? And he said, no, read it. It's a gift for you. I said, what is it? So I start reading, and it's a form, and it was a form to change his name. He changed his name because he said, Dad, this is who I am, Brian Carter Poston, and I wanted you to know that. And I said, great, you don't have to do this for me, though. This is for you. And so that's what he did. But I never asked him to do this there was never a discussion. This was something that he just wanted to do. And he said, this is who I am. So that's just how we raised him.
A father and a stepfather who both lost a son. Randy, we can't forget the fact that this was a 29-year-old man, prime of his life, and he was taken away from his whole family and friends.
Right. Well, the defense's whole job is to humanize the defendant and make people have sympathy for her. This is the exact opposite. I mean, the testimony has nothing to do with the crime. It has everything to do with having empathy and sympathy for the victim, who is actually the person they're trying to seek vengeance for or justice for. It was very powerful testimony.
Yeah, well, a little bit. I mean, the sense of that she kept showing up when he didn't really want a part of it. It seemed like he was wanting to end that relationship when she ultimately shot him. Let's move now on to a co-worker. Remember, he worked at a law firm. There was an attorney who was friends with Ryan Poston. Let's see what he had to say.
The time that you spent with Mr. Poston, at any point in time during that, did you come to know the defendant?
Oh, yeah, quite well. I mean, I consider him a very good friend.
I'm sorry.
Defendant. I'm sorry. I actually got to take a breath. Believe it or not, I'm even nervous a little bit.
You're not used to being on this side of
Yeah, this is a weird perspective.
Right?
Sorry. Did I come to know the defendant? Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I didn't know her well, but I definitely knew her by first name.
Okay. Tell the jury about how it is that you met the defendant.
Well, through Ryan, I knew that she was Ryan's girlfriend, and I knew they had ups and downs. Like, it would be more than ups and downs. It was definitely, it was on and off, I guess. And so she'd come around Ryan, basically, and always want to be around the office.
So let's talk about that. The other ways he did it didn't seem to work. What do you mean?
First, he was trying to give her hints or infer. Most of it was text. There was a lot of, it was almost all text. I can't remember necessarily Facebook, but it was electronically. And then the text got more obvious and outright, we're done, we're finished, things of that nature. It just never worked. But he wouldn't really, I don't think he ever, that I knew of, did it face to face, except this time he was standing up. It's over. And it was obvious because things were going well for him.
And do you know when he was intending on doing that?
I want to say, I think I met with him the middle or towards the end of the week during the day, and I thought it was that weekend, if I remember.
All right. Right around the time, though, that he was killed.
Oh, I think it was that day. That was what it was supposed to happen. And
so, Randy, we're getting an insight right now into the relationship between Shayna and Ryan. Is there a common theme here that you've seen in other kinds of cases? I mean, there seems to be what the defense is pointing out, a level of obsession.
Yeah, if it was a reverse gender roles, you'd be saying stalker, stalker, stalker. It sounds like a stalker. You know, that's exactly the opposite of, what we see all the time, stalkers. And then, on the other hand, if I'm the defense, I'm a little bit encouraged because he tried to break up with her, but he couldn't. He still obviously had sex with her, so maybe broke up, didn't broke up. Maybe there were mixed messages being sent out. There's a little glimmer of hope for the defense to go on this testimony.
All right, glimmer of hope. You know who might be able to help the defense? The defendant, because Shayna Hubers took the stand. When we come back from our break, we're going to play you her testimony. And let me tell you right now, you don't want to miss it. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thank you for joining us here on a very special day, because today is Defendant Speaks Day. Let's talk a little bit more about it. So Defendant Speaks Day, we are covering all of those trials where the defendant took the stand. It's always something exciting to see, and we have some great trials lined up for you. Right now, though, we're covering the Shayna Hubers trial. Remember, she was on trial for the murder of her boyfriend, Ryan Poston, a 29-year-old young man, attorney, prime of his life. She claimed, though, she was acting in self-defense, that Ryan tried to attack her that night. The prosecution said, no, 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 no. This woman wanted to kill this man. She knew what she was doing, and she's lying. Now, we've heard the back and forth from several witnesses talking about the relationship, talking about the crime scene. The defense's maybe last hope was to put Shayna Hubers on the stand. And for everybody who's just joining us, great timing, because right now we're going to play you when Shayna Hubers took the stand. Take a look.
Did you all have any private conversations at that time?
Yes, sir.
And did you all go anywhere else together?
Yes. Ryan met me at the restaurant bar that I was having the party at is called Tin Roof. It was fairly new back then. This is a long time ago. He wanted me to leave Tin Roof with him and go to a different location, like 2 doors down. And as we were leaving the bar, I remember he grabbed onto my wrist really with a strong grip and was walking ahead of me down the street towards, I believe it was called Two Keys Tavern at the time. And I remember thinking that he had a strong personality and was, I feared him. I felt like I needed to do what he was telling me to do. Once we got there, we were sitting in a booth at this tavern, and I recall Ryan, I had on a dress, and I recall Ryan reaching at my dress and grabbing onto one of my thighs and making a comment about my thigh that felt inappropriate or vulgar for how little I knew him in person. And
How did you react to that?
I got up and went to the bathroom, and my phone had died, and I asked another man if I could use his phone, and I called a cab, and I left the location, I left the facility and went home.
And what occurred after you went on to bed?
I went on to bed. I woke up for whatever reason. I had a chair like this one, like at my computer table next to my bed. And I woke up and he was sitting in my computer table at the chair, watching me sleep. I don't know if he was also playing around the computer because he couldn't sleep or what, but he was sitting in the chair watching me sleep. And he said, "I can't sleep on the couch. Is it okay if I get in bed with you?" And I remember saying, "Yeah, but I really do just want to sleep. Like, I have to get up tomorrow and study for school," or something like that. And I allowed him to get in the bed with me. One thing led to another, and he wanted to mess around with me. And
was that okay with you at the beginning?
At the beginning, it was.
All right, this is part one of when Shayna Hubers took the stand, explaining the beginning of her relationship with Ryan Poston. I'm back here with trial attorney and professor at Emory University School of Law, Randy Kessler. Now, Randy, this is part one of her testimony. How's she doing so far?
Well, she's got a long road to go, but she's starting to humanize herself. I mean, the jury has to know what kind of monster could do this, and all of a sudden they see her. Maybe she's not the monster she's been portrayed, so it's a good start. Obviously, I don't know that, they're going to say, well, why'd you stay with him if he was this terrible person? There's a lot of obstacles for her to overcome, but I think especially since it didn't, work for her to not testify the first time around, I don't think she had a choice, and I don't think she's made any big gaffes so far.
Well, she's like the IMDb of movie specificity, talking about Ashley Judd movies. Let's continue on right now with some more of her testimony. And I'm telling you, do not turn away. This is something you don't want to miss. Take a look.
Did you all continue to see each other after Thanksgiving?
Yes, sir.
And was that continuous, or were there bumps in the... Oh, that's me. Was that continuous, or was that continuous?
I know what you were going to say. There were some bumps in the road, but there was one breakup between Thanksgiving and Christmas that lasted a couple weeks, and then we got back together about a week before Christmas and stayed together until late winter. Ryan always put pressure on me to orgasm. He put pressure on me to get breast implants, and he also put pressure on me to remain a certain size or lose weight. At one point, I lost weight for him, and he told me I was too skinny and to gain weight. He was always very particular about my size and things of that nature. The orgasm thing was the most important, I believe.
And how would you describe your relationship going forward into 2012?
It wasn't the same as it had been before.
How so?
It was strained. Ryan went days without talking to me. I didn't know what he wanted from me. I began to see a couple other guys in Lexington. It ended.
Did you tell Mr. Poston that?
I told him that I was interested in a couple of guys in Lexington, and he told me not to pursue them, that he still was interested in me, that he still wanted me. We went out to dinner at Cloud9 Sushi in January of 2012, and I brought this up to him. I said, there's these men in Lexington I'm interested in, and I don't feel like you feel the same towards me. I don't know what you want from me or if you even want me anymore. And he said, no, I don't want you to see those guys.
Randy, what should we take from this? Is this value added? Does this add to the discussion about him maybe being a controlling boyfriend? Or is this really just white noise?
I think it totally comes down to what the experiences of each juror are. You may have a woman on the jury who's been in a relationship like that who says, I understand exactly what it's like. Or you may have people that have never been in a relationship like that discount it totally. She can't do much worse than the conviction she got in the first trial. I think she's doing what she can.
The idea, though, of painting him as a, misogynist, he was fooling around, and the idea that he was so particular about the way she looked and the sex positions, and he was very aggressive, I guess, is the idea to say, hey, jury, this was not a good guy. It's something you should consider.
I think that, and also to see that, maybe she had some justification. Maybe there was a time when she had to defend herself, especially that first story where he grabbed her thigh and she left. Of course, she went back to him. But, maybe it's battered women syndrome. Who knows what they're going to come up with after this. I think it's also sort of interesting to have an older man examine her on those issues about having, she could not orgasm. Maybe a younger person or maybe a woman more her age that, would have been able to sort of sympathize a little better. Interesting testimony.
You're right. Perception is everything. And I'm curious, what about the way she looks? What about the way she speaks on the stand? How is she presenting herself? Do you think she's coming off as credible? Do you think she's coming off as all there? I mean, really, just look at the way she speaks and looks and acts. I'm curious just from that perspective. What do you think?
Well, I don't think it's terrible. She doesn't come off as glamorous. She doesn't come off as overly defensive. She doesn't come off as snarky or cocky or sarcastic. I think this is about the best she can do. You've got to come off as a plain, normal person that anybody could see as their sister, their daughter, or their friend. So I don't think she's doing such a bad job in how she's appearing.
Well, this is part one of when she testified. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll play you part two of Shayna Huber's testimony. Stay tuned. So So, what are we talking about right now? The Shayna Huber's trial. We're recapping it on Defendant Speaks Day, recapping some of those trials where the defendant actually took the stand. And that's what we're covering right now, when Shayna Huber's took the stand in her own defense for the murder of Ryan Poston. We played you part 1. We're about to play you part 2. And this is where she gets into orgasming. I'm not kidding you. That became a key fact in this case, a key point that was made. So let's learn a little bit more about it.
Did you communicate to him about whether or not you did in fact achieve orgasm?
Yes, I did.
And what did you tell him?
At times, I lied to him and told him that I had achieved orgasm, or I faked an orgasm, because I wanted him to feel better about the situation. I felt like the whole issue emasculated him. And he also used it to make me feel inadequate and like I was less of a person or a woman, that I hadn't had this experience in my life. And so yes, I lied to him about it on occasion. And a girl began talking to me who knew Ryan, and she told me some things that Ryan had been saying about me that were very cruel and hurtful and degrading.
And how did you respond to that?
I was drunk, and I was very upset, and I sent him text messages asking him if the things that the girl had said were true. And he denied it, and he was angry with me. And the next morning, I got in my car and I drove over to his house to confront him about it, because I felt like the things he was saying he was spreading rumors about me that were untrue, and I felt like the things he was saying were so horrible, and about my vagina. He was talking about my vagina with people that I went to school with, and I felt like he was making it so that I couldn't even live in my hometown, and I thought it was cruel. And I thought he was attempting to sabotage my future so I couldn't move on. I walked in and confronted them about it, and we got in a big fight. And he picked me up and carried me from the bedroom out of the condo and threw me on the doorstep. And I came back inside to get I had set my purse inside the house with my keys, and I came back inside the door to get my purse and my keys. And when I did so, he began beating my body with the door over and over and over.
What door?
The door to the front of the house, the door to the front of the condo.
Now, I've heard a lot of testimony before. Randy, I'm not sure I've ever heard so many topics like this discussed before. What do you make of all this?
Well, one thing is for sure, she has rehearsed that. She has gone over with her lawyer, not because it's so good, but because any lawyer worth their salt would absolutely have her practice that. There's so many danger holes and pitfalls, using the word vagina, that's going to distract everybody. But she got through it, and it's about her only chance is to make herself the victim. Of course, the jury's going to wonder, why did she go back in? If you're thrown outside by an abusive man, don't go back in. But there are people that have been through that, and that is possible. So she's got a possible defense here.
I just don't think I've ever heard orgasm so much in a testimony quite like this. But then again, we've never really had a trial quite like this, have we? Let's continue on with more of Shayna Huber's On the Stand.
Did you and Mr. Poston go to a shooting range together?
In early October, yes.
Okay. And did you communicate with Christy Horler about that?
Yes, sir.
And did you indicate, what did you communicate to Ms. Horler about that?
I told her that we were going to the range together.
Did you send her a picture of you at the range?
I'm I'm not sure if I sent her the picture or if I sent the picture to someone else.
Okay. Did you have any intention of wanting to shoot Mr. Poston at that time?
It wasn't meant seriously. I tend to have a dark sense of humor, as do some of my friends, and the text was not meant seriously, no.
Now we're getting into when Shayna Hubers is trying to explain away those comments that were brought up. Randy trying to say it's just a joke might be one thing, but then a short time after, you actually ended up shooting him. So can she really get out of that statement?
The biggest fact is that the years have passed, and so she's had a long time to think about this moment. If she ever had to explain this to a jury, how would she do it? So if this is the best she can do, that's an uphill battle. On the other hand, there might be someone on the jury that's looking for, dying for an excuse, a reason, a cause to let her off the hook. She's got to give them something. You got to give them something to hang their hat on, as we say. This is something to hang your hat on. If you're predisposed to want to believe that this woman was abused and had to act in self-defense, this gives you a reason to do that. But it is a little bit too little, too late, in my opinion.
How would you question her if you were representing her and you put her on the stand? What kind of testimony would you want to elicit from her?
Well, the first thing I'd want tears. I'd want remorse. I'd want sorrow. I'd want her to look like she feels terrible about the whole thing. I'd want her to preface every answer with, I still can't believe what I did. I still can't believe what happened. There's none of that. This is much too factual, much too vanilla, in my opinion, to grab the jury's emotion. It's an emotional question now. The only way they win is to get the jury on her side emotionally. I don't think she's there.
But I'm curious, doesn't that backfire? Doesn't a jury see that and say, well, this is fake, she's faking it? I've seen it go both ways. How do you seem genuinely remorseful on the stand unless you really are remorseful on the stand?
Well, that's exactly it. The end of your question hit the nail on the head. You've got to be genuinely remorseful. And maybe that's exactly why she's not doing it, or the lawyer isn't trying to evoke those sentiments, because it just wouldn't come out authentic for her. That's what I would perceive, that if she's not crying about it, it's because she doesn't want to cry about it. She doesn't feel remorseful. I'm sure somewhere deep down inside there's some remorse, but it would have to be right in front of the jury for full display. And that's why we love jury trials. It's the trial, the courtroom, the play, the demonstration of the truth in front of everybody. Emotions are raw. If she doesn't have those emotions, she's not going to win. Yeah, and I get it's a self-defense argument, and you want to say that you're justified, but you make a great point, Randy. No remorse at shooting your 29-year-old boyfriend in the face multiple times. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to play you even more of Shayna Hubers on the stand. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. So here on the network, we have a special program for you all day, and that is called Defendant Speaks Day. We're recapping some of the most exciting trials that we've covered where the defendant takes the stand. And right now, we're covering the Shayna Hubers trial. Where we last left off, Shayna Hubers was talking all about her relationship with Ryan Poston and all the and all the events leading up to the shooting. Now let's get into the details of the actual shooting. This is, again, Shayna Hubers back on the stand.
And what happened next?
I turned and looked at him, and he was running towards me. He grabbed me again, and he picked me up in a similar way again, and he started carrying me. And I believed, because of the direction he was moving, that he was trying to carry me out of the house, as he had done before earlier in that year. And when he was trying to carry me, I guess I was kicking, and he fell on me. I don't believe he meant to. And he fell on top of me onto an area between the sofa and onto the footstool. My chest, this part of my body, was on the footstool, and all of Ryan's weight was behind me on the footstool. And he had all of his weight on top of me, and he laid on me in that position for what felt like a while. I'm not sure how long it was.
What do you recall happened next? Were you aware? Well, were you aware there was a gun on the table?
Yes. I remember trying to stand up where I was sitting on the floor, and Ryan pushed me back down by my chest. He put his hand on my chest and pushed me back down onto the floor. And I was crying, and I was hysterically crying, and I recall Ryan standing over me and grabbing the gun that was sitting on the table and pointing it at me and saying, I could just kill you right now and get away with it. Nobody would even know.
How did you react to that?
I was shocked. I was afraid. I didn't understand what I had done to deserve any of this.
So, Randy, as we listen to this, isn't it possible this is all true? That this is exactly what went down? Yeah, you can look at the apartment, say it wasn't tossed around, there was seemed to be a fight, but maybe this all happened and things weren't disturbed. Isn't everything that she's saying true? Couldn't it be true?
This is the highlight of her defense. I mean, she's starting to get emotional. Anybody that's been in an abusive relationship or has confided in a friend or talked to a friend about their abusive relationship, something here is going to ring true. There's the words, I mean, either it's the perfect story or there's some truth to it. And it sounds very much like this. You're exactly right, Jesse. I think this could be true. You know, how did she react to it might be a different story, but certainly these are probably the best things that she could be saying and the best part of her defense.
Okay, well, let's conclude with her testimony, see how it continues on, and then Randy and I will discuss what we think of it. Take a look.
Did you get up from the floor at that point?
No, not yet.
Okay. Tell the ladies and gentlemen, the jury, what happened.
He set the gun back down on the table, and he walked around the table, and he was still talking, and he was still saying hurtful things. I don't remember exactly what. And he sat down in his chair for a brief moment, and he was standing up from the chair, and he was reaching across the table, and I don't know if he was reaching for the gun or reaching for me, but I was still sitting on the floor at this point in time, and I got up off the floor, and I grabbed the gun, and I shot him.
How many times did you shoot?
I know now that it was 6 times.
Did you keep track at that point?
No.
Do you know what happened when you first shot him? You know what his body did? You know.
When he was first shot, he let out a really loud noise that sounded like an animal. It sounded like a bear, some type of wild animal. And it really freaked me out.
Shevers, after you shot him, what did you do?
I couldn't find my phone to call out, and I searched the apartment over for my phone.
And do you know where you found your phone?
I'm not sure, but I know it took me a while to find it.
Okay. And when you got it, what did you do?
I called my mother.
And how did you describe what had happened to your mother?
I just told her the truth.
Okay. Do you recall who used the term self-defense
Yes.
during that conversation? Who was it?
My mother.
Did you call anyone else after you spoke to your mother?
911.
Okay. And when you did that, did you follow the instructions of the 911 operator?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's break it down. Randy, aside from the fact that she shot somebody, is there anything else odd about the description of events that she just told the entire jury?
Well, you know, the noise, the sound that he made, obviously, but none of us had been there, so it's sort of hard to judge her on, oh, he sounded like a bear, he sounded like a wild animal.
Is that a weird way to describe it, though?
It is weird, but, you know, these are such unique circumstances. How can any of us know how we would have reacted? So I give her some leeway on that. I think she might have just created a little bit of doubt, whether it's reasonable doubt, whether it's beyond a reasonable doubt or less than a reasonable doubt, I don't know. But this is her shining moment for her defense.
Let me ask you a question. If we take everything she just said is true, is that justified killing? Is that self-defense or is this murder?
If we take it exactly as the way she said it, I think it is justified defense. I think she actually says he pushed her down, he was on top of her. She didn't explain the crucial moment, you know, what happened between when he pushed her down and she ended up having the gun and shooting him. But it sounds like there's enough there that it's no longer beyond a reasonable doubt that we believe he's killed her, that she killed him, and that it was premeditated. If we take, like you said, everything she says is absolutely true. But of course, there's other testimony, and there's other witnesses, and there was other evidence.
Then again, though, you had said it earlier in the program, if she shot him once, maybe it would have been self-defense, but to shoot so many times, now again, there are times we always wonder if you're in that kind of threatening situation, do you just unload the clip? You keep firing until you think the threat is down, but is that really what happened here, or was this cold-blooded? Was this trying to end his life?
Well, it's interesting. Your earlier question said if we take everything she says as true, but she didn't say, like the testimony previously was, that she, in her statements to the law enforcement originally, that she got up, walked around the table, and shot him again. If that part of it had been added to what she just said, then she loses the case. You're exactly right. That's not what, you know, self-defense is, where you shoot, get the person off of you, and then you run for help.
Yeah.
She shot, apparently walked around the table, shot a few more times, and then called for help.
All right, what we need to do now is see how the prosecution and the defense summarize their arguments, because we're going to be coming to the conclusion of the Shayna Huber's case right after this break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're coming to the conclusion of the Shayna Huber's trial, our recap of this trial here on Defendant Speaks Day, recapping some of the most incredible cases we covered where the defendant takes the stand. We just played you the testimony of when Shayna Huber's took the stand. Let's see if it paid off. Let's see what the prosecution first said in their closing argument. Then we'll play you the defense's closing argument, and then we're going to play you the verdict. Let's start with the prosecution.
The last 3 weeks, I think this courtroom has probably been a little bit of a state. Well, no, probably for the last 6 years. This whole situation has been a performance. Not my words, her words. I'm so good at acting. And the fact of the matter is this: if you cannot trust the messenger, you can't trust the message. It's that simple. Shayna Hubers has proven herself over and over and over and over again to not be trustworthy with her actions or her words. Not me who's saying it, it's her. When she was in Hawaii, she didn't tell her mother where she was. She lied and said she was somewhere else. Her friends, according to her, she lied to them to tell them about her very personal, very detailed sexual experiences in order to make them think she had a healthy relationship. Do you remember me asking her? So you have to tell your friends you had anal sex in order to prove that you have a healthy relationship? She didn't have an answer for that. But she lied, if you believe what she said on the stand. Lying to her friends. And her classmates who are in the school project, she tells them she's in Hawaii for a funeral when she's out boozing it up with her aunt, hanging out at the bar. Tells them her poor aunt died. She will lie to get what she wants. Just like what she said before, I'll go to the ends of the earth to accomplish my goal. It just depends on what her goal is at any given time.
Prosecution's asking the jury there that question, why should we believe Shayna Hubers? Why should we believe anything that we just heard her testify to when she took the stand? Let's see what the defense's response to that was in their closing argument.
To try to give you the impression. You also know that Ms. Hubers was aware before that of things that Mr. Poston had said about his former girlfriend, his Worth, and her fear. This is in July of 2012. Referring to her, she's terrified of me. One of the reasons she originally started dating me was because she was very aware I would have killed her ex-boyfriend. At the drop of a hat, no one would have ever found his body. That is communicated to Ms. Hubers. That's something. She thinks her dad can protect her from all those people in elections. And she's probably right. She knows he couldn't protect her from me.
All right, that was the prosecution and defense. Randy, want a quick question from you before we reveal the verdict. How tough is it for a jury to make a decision, especially in this kind of case?
It's really tough, and that defense lawyer's got the toughest thing to do. He's got to tarnish the reputation of a victim, someone who's not with us, can't defend himself. He's doing it gently. It's a close call. I don't think this is a slam dunk either way, but prosecution did a pretty good job in this case. Defense has an uphill battle, but let's see what happens.
That's right. Let's see what happens right now. Okay, was this murder? Was this self-defense? Guilty? Not guilty? Here's the verdict. Take a look.
The jury has reached a verdict. Would the foreperson please stand up? Okay, and Ms. Lawrence, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, sir.
And is what you have the jury's verdict in your hand?
Yes.
Okay, would you give that to the bailiff, please? Okay, verdict form. We, the jury, find the defendant, Shayna Hubers, guilty of murder under instruction number 5, signed by the foreperson.
Wow. Surreal moment there, Randy. So you're listening to this. She was found guilty. Should be noted that she was sentenced to life in prison, which is different than what she was first sentenced to in her first trial, 40 years in prison. What do you think?
Wow, you're right. I mean, there's nothing like that moment, whether it's innocent, not guilty, guilty, or a lesser charge, nothing like that. You know, we all, I think, have some sort of sympathy for her because in the back of your mind, even if you were proven beyond a reasonable doubt, there's still some little doubt, some minor doubt. What if the jury got it wrong? But wow, tough job by the jury, but they did their job.
Now, it should be noted that's not the end of her story. She is eligible for parole in 14 years because she's already served 6 years in jail. What's the likelihood that she could be released early?
Well, you know, so far we haven't heard about her being anything other than a model prisoner, and that's what you look at. What are the chances if she's released back into society that she's going to commit another crime? And obviously, right now, things look good for her to get parole, but that's a long time in the future. She could make a lot of mistakes in prison. We'll see what happens. But I would say she's a good candidate for getting early release.
What do you think the tipping point was for the jury? And they said, you know what, this is not self-defense.
I just think that, like you pointed out, the first shot, maybe, but the 6 more shots, if it's self-defense, 1 shot to the face is enough to keep yourself safe, and then you run down the street screaming and yelling, getting somebody to help you. You don't stick around. You don't stay there. You don't shoot 5 more times. That's got to be the turning point.
Did you have to imagine that became, the idea of reasonable doubt became in discussion there in the jury pool? I mean, you're basically have to convince a unanimous jury one way or another. That is easier said than done. Correct me if I'm wrong.
100%, because that's the reason we have a jury of so many people. If we had one judge, it depends on how that judge grew up, what that judge's history and you know, life is like. But you have somebody on the jury almost always that sympathizes with the defendant, somebody who's had a relative that was wrongfully accused, or they've been wrongfully accused of doing something, and they want to find a way to say, hey, when I was wrongfully accused, I didn't like it. I don't like that she's wrongfully accused. So that's the hard part. They did it. The prosecution convinced everybody.
Randy, real quick, our last question here, because I know I have to sign you off. On Defendant Speaks Day, was it a good idea for her to take the stand or not?
Well, you know, hindsight again is 2020. It didn't win when she was not testifying. It didn't win when she did. I think if she didn't testify and was found guilty, she would have always regretted it. At least she gave it her best shot and did testify. I still think it was the right decision.
Randy Kessler, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your insight. We can't wait to have you back here on Law and Crime.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, we're going to take a break, but we're going to be covering our second trial when we come back, the Jason Van Dyke trial, another case where a defendant took the stand. Did it work out well for him? We'll have to see. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime.